Well, let's get started. I see a couple more people are joining, so fantastic. Welcome. My name is Mike O'Neill. I work for Fuji, and this is an ongoing series of technical discussions that we have put together. Not a sales deal. This is a chance to really get into and learn some of these cool technical products. And today we're spending time on Microsoft Power Platform. I will tell you, I was a little surprised. I thought we'd have a huge crowd because whenever I talk to customers, this is what everyone wants to talk about. So I'm a little surprised that we had a session. We do these every second Tuesday, so every 2 weeks we do them. Our last session had a ton of people. We did AWS with Azure, but I really thought if I had put money on it, I thought this one would outdraw that one, and maybe it will. Maybe we'll get some people at the end joining in. But I'm glad you're here because you're going to learn a ton about Power Platform. I'm going to go through this. I have very, very few slides, and it's mostly demo. So as I pointed out already, you do have in your GoToWebinar tool, you have a chat window and you have a Q&A window, and I've got a secondary window open so I can see your comments as they come in. And that's a great way if you want to ask me a question during today's session. We try to make these interactive. It's hard when everyone has microphones and background noises, but if you can tee it up in either the chat or the questions window, I'll be glad to take any questions that you have, and we can even unmute your microphone if we need to make sure that conversation happens. I don't want this to just be me talking the entire time. All right, let's get going. Here's our agenda, and you'll notice the number of seconds that I put on this. I'm going to take literally less than 2 minutes to explain who is Fuji, 30 seconds to explain who I am and what these Expert Connect sessions are supposed to be, and then the rest is just technical information for you. So let's just go through it real quick. Fuji is a consultant service provider. We build solutions for customers. We're global. We have 3 offices. We're headquartered here in the United States. We're based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have offices down in Costa Rica, which gives us nearshore capability, allows us to do security monitoring and managed services for the US in the same time zone. We also have a large organization over in India. And you can see by this slide, we've got a bunch of statistics. We're about 600 people strong. Consultants, we've got engineers, we've got cybersecurity specialists all over, and we're growing like crazy. And that's a very, very good thing to have. We offer 4 key things, and only 4 key things. We do project engineering, quality engineering, and what you're seeing today, low code, no code. Put that all under kind of the digital bucket, digital services. We provide cloud services, advisory, architecture, migration. We have a whole group devoted to security and cybersecurity, app security, infrastructure, you name it. And then we also have data analysts, and that's a specialty of mine with data engineering, data lakes, data pools, data factories, all that kind of stuff. What's good about this slide is what we don't do. If you come to us and ask for something we don't do, there's a lot of partners out there that are going to raise their hand and say, sure, I can do that for you, and then they go try to hire someone. We stay within our swim lane, and by that I simply mean we know what we're really, really good at, and that's what we provide our customers. And so if you ask for accounting, for example, we don't do accounting solutions. We will point you to a partner that we work with that does, but we won't try to do that ourselves because, again, it's not in our swim lane. It's not our specialty. So who am I? Most people know me. I've been around for a long time. I'm an 18-year Microsoft veteran. I helped run Microsoft's seminar division. I actually helped create that and then run it for about 12 years. That includes MSDN, the developer side of things, TechNet, which is the IT pro side, small business partners, all those groups reported into an amazing group of people that I work with. I'm a technology generalist, and what that means is I started at Microsoft in 1990. This was back in the DOS days, believe it or not. Matter of fact, my first job at Microsoft was going around the country teaching people how to load HiMemSys and EMM 386 and their DOS drivers in order to get stuff to work. And people today, they're like, that's not a real job. It's like, yeah, that was my job at Microsoft. This was before Windows, so that tells you how old I am. The benefit, though, is I was there during the growth periods of Microsoft. I got to see it all, almost 2 decades. And so I have a lot of great background information, much of which I'm going to share with you today. And when I say generalist, I'm very technical on a lot of products. But today, Microsoft tends to hire specialists. If we hire you for SQL Server, for example, you know everything about SQL Server at the deepest level. But you don't necessarily know how SQL Server interacts with Exchange Server and works with Azure and other stuff. You're just focused on your product. Generalist had to know it all. I had to teach SQL Server and Exchange Server, as well as Office, as well as Windows, as well as server, networking, you name it. So anyway, a little bit about me. What are these connects? Again, not a sales webinar. I really want people to understand, I'm not trying to sell you anything here. We do provide these services, and I'll call out examples where, yeah, okay, we do that. But the idea here is not to just pound you with, buy, or hire us. It's to give some understanding of why Microsoft and other technologies are doing this. We're not just Microsoft. Obviously, I've got a deep Microsoft background, but we're also doing GCP. I just last week did a full AWS session that went really well. As I mentioned, technical discussions, and I forgot to remove Eric was from last week. He's our AWS specialist, so he was helping me. But today it's just going to be me. So I've got a quick question, and you get to play along if you would like. There's 7 of you in the chat. Use your chat or questions, it's probably easier in chat. I want you to answer this question. Which one of these Microsoft products was the fastest product in history to reach or sell over $1 billion in revenue? And you can either type it out or use the number, that's fine. So I'm asking everyone to play along, it's just for fun. Which product do you think hit $1 billion quicker than all the other products? So go to your chat window, throw me a number, let's see who gets closest. A couple of you said Windows, someone said, Tosh said SharePoint. Naveen said Windows as well. Okay, good. So 2 Windows, 1 SharePoint. Give you a second more to do it. Well, you may be surprised that the answer to this question is SharePoint. SharePoint is the correct answer. SharePoint is the fastest growing Microsoft product ever in the history of ever. Most people don't realize how big of a product it is for Microsoft, especially compared to Windows and Office and all the other stuff. SharePoint amasses or accounts for over 1 out of every $5 that Microsoft makes comes from SharePoint. Now you may be asking, well, why is he talking about this? We're supposed to be talking about Power Platform. SharePoint is the reason Power Platform exists. And we're going to talk again that why is really important, why Microsoft went this way. In 2023, Microsoft SharePoint accounts for 1 out of every $5 that the company makes in revenue. That is a massive amount of money. If you broke SharePoint away from Microsoft, I did the research on this, it would be in the top 20 largest companies in the US. That's how big this monster of a product is. The issue though, and what you need to understand is, many of you have been around for a long time, you know SharePoint's gotten big, it's gotten a little old, it's gotten a little tired. They keep adding more and more and more, and it's starting to slow down. And so Microsoft started to realize there's a real problem with SharePoint, partially due to its amazing success. And so they started to get worried that their biggest revenue generator in the history of the company was in potential of diminishing and becoming a lot less than it was. By the way, I do want to point out that if any of you had answered SharePoint, Teams, Skype, or OneDrive, out of the graciousness of my heart, I would have counted that. And the reason I would count that is because SharePoint, Teams, Skype, and OneDrive are all actually the same product. Most people don't know this. They're just branded as separate products, but they all come from the same source code. Now, later on, I have a technical discussion in a couple of months where we'll really dive into this. I'll explain this. I'm doing some training for some customers right now where I'm teaching them this concept, but these are actually all the same product. They've just been merged under one kind of unified deal. We'll save that for another time, but I would have given you credit if you had answered any of those. That's the case. So how does this relate to Power Platform? Again, I've only got a couple more slides and then we're going to go demo crazy. here's the history. 1996, Microsoft comes out with Front Page. I don't know if any of you remember that. It's Microsoft's first attempt at having a designer let you build your own custom web pages and the like. In 2002, they finally come out with SharePoint. And I've got some great stories because I was intimately involved with the creation and publishing of the original SharePoint, but that'll have to save that for a different time. And then within 2003, so 2 years later, roughly, Microsoft added this thing called InfoPath. InfoPath was a form builder. It would let you integrate with SharePoint and plug data in, and people loved it and went crazy. 2007, they evolved into SharePoint Designer, which allowed you to do more functionality and customization. So that really takes us all the way up to about 2010, where SharePoint was king, Microsoft's killing it, they have these amazing tools. But the problem is for Microsoft, a lot of customers started using devices outside of the Microsoft world. They wanted to work on Android, they wanted to work on Apple and Mac. I'm actually a Mac specialist. That's why when I came to Microsoft, they hired me because I knew Apple better than anybody else. SharePoint doesn't work on those platforms. It wasn't designed to work on those platforms. So the problem is they're making all this money. Things are going great for Microsoft, but they have now got a tool set that's completely limited to the SharePoint platform, meaning I can't take that InfoPath or SharePoint Designer and use it on a Mac. It's just not supported. I can't take it over to Android or Linux or any of those other operating systems. It has to work only inside of SharePoint. And that was a major, major limitation. Starting in 2011, Microsoft came out with a bunch of fiscal analytics programs they were adding into Excel. And basically what they did is they decided to build their own product, something called Power BI. We'll look at that today. But I've got this little section I've marked off here called the void. And I call it the void because what Microsoft did is they came out and they tried to get people to stop using InfoPath. It was a very popular product, but it was only tied to SharePoint. They said, throw it away, you're not gonna need it. We've come out with this universal form builder. And with much excitement and much press and everything else under the sun, Microsoft announced that this product would be out imminently. In 2013, they basically announced that the product they were working on, they were just getting ready to do, they decided it wasn't ready, and they killed the project and said, we're not going to ship that. We're keep using InfoPath for now, but we'll have a replacement for it quickly. In 2015, they did the same thing. This time they released the product, and it was terrible, and no one liked it. And Microsoft came back and said, okay, that was a bad idea. Let's kill that product, but don't use InfoPath. We still have this other form builder. We'll get there. And they tried it again. In 2016, they released a whole new version. And again, everyone hated it, and it was terrible, and Microsoft killed the product. So we have a span of about 7 years where Microsoft kept saying, don't use InfoPath, customers. It's going away. We're going to this new world. And every time they tried to put something out, it failed. Finally, in 2018, they came out with something called Power Apps and Flow. And the product called Flow has now changed. It's now called Power Automate. You're more familiar with it. And those were finally universal forms routing tools and forms building tools. That's what those two things are used for. And they were very successful. Microsoft did a great job. Very painful for the 7 years that they tried and failed, but when they finally got it by 2018, I think most people agree it's been just a drop-down success. Eventually, by 2021, Microsoft decided to take all of these products and wrap them together into something called the Power Platform. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So they've taken Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and then a couple more products I'll show you in a second, and they bundled them all together into this core technology called Power Platform. Power Platform comes in your Office subscription or your Microsoft 365 subscription. So if you own Microsoft 365, you got a E1, E3, E5 license, etc., or any variations of that, you're going to have this software and the client licenses that come with it. Okay, I want to point this out. Again, I apologize, we're almost done with the slides. Power Platform is an extension of SharePoint, okay? SharePoint does not go away. This isn't a SharePoint killer. As a matter of fact, this is a SharePoint enabler that allows you to get a whole lot more out of SharePoint. So it enables SharePoint in new exciting ways, and it extends the functionality that you were able to use, but only in SharePoint, and now extends it out to the Apple side of the world, and now extends it out to Android and Linux and everything else. How does it do that? Well, it was written entirely in a browser technology. And because it was written in a browser technology, any browser in the world that supports HTML5, which Safari and Chrome and every other browser out there pretty much does, now can run Power Platform right inside of their Linux environment or their Apple environment or whatever the case may be. So what's happened is they've extended it out. I've got some examples, and I'm really dating myself. I was trying to do this yesterday. Here's an example of a TiVo. Most young kids, my kids, they don't even know what a TiVo is, right? It was the first digital recorder that came out and allowed you to record your network television anytime you wanted to and play it back. Nowadays, that's just part of every cable service out there. But back in the original days, TiVo was super exciting. It didn't kill network television, it extended it. It gave you more options. More likely, the way my kids think about this today, it's like Netflix and Disney and Hulu and Amazon. They haven't gotten rid of CBS and ABC and NBC and Fox, but they've extended it. They now allow new viewing and new shows and new other stuff. This is what Power Platform is doing for SharePoint. It's not killing SharePoint. It's extending it and pulling in these new kind of genres, if you want to think about it as a way to work. So this is what Power Platform looks like today, and this has changed recently. We now have the addition of Power Pages, which wasn't actually a product until just this year, actually. It is still in beta. I'm going to talk about it in a very small sense because it's so new, but we will explain what that is. But now we have Power BI, that's for your business analytics, data processing. Power Apps is that universal form builder that allows you to collect and process data from pretty much anywhere. Power Automate is the business process. It's the rules that take the data from the form and then say, if it's an invoice over this amount, I need it to go to this person and this has to be approved, all that stuff. Power Virtual Agents is the chat bots that engage and allow customers to do things like look up where's my order or when does my product arrive or how do I pay my bill, that kind of stuff. Power Pages, this brand new product, this is a web builder that's integrated into all these other things. And I'll take a second to explain this. If you remember, the idea was to disconnect from SharePoint. So Power Platform still can work within SharePoint, but it isn't dependent. You don't have to have SharePoint in order to use Power Platform. Okay, that was the whole design goal, if you will. One of the things that SharePoint users wanted was the ability to collect data and forms and other stuff, but to use that externally outside their company. I am a power provider, I'm an electric company, and I want customers to be able to log into my website, use a form, and pull up their bill. You couldn't do that with SharePoint because SharePoint wasn't licensed for external usage. There was no way to know how many users outside of the electric company would ever want to pull up their bill. So how do you license the ability to use SharePoint for a customer who any given month may or may not want to use that service? So Microsoft just didn't provide it. It wasn't able to. With Power Pages, you're now going to have kind of a Wix-like interface where you don't have to know programming. It's simple, low code, no code, drag and drop, build these beautiful sites, but it's going to be able to attach into the rest of the Power Platform to allow you to do things like forms routing and processing and analytics and everything else under the sun. So all of those products are built on top of these three kind of commonalities: data connectors, AI builder, and the Dataverse. And that's what I'm going to be demoing, is these products working with those core technologies. All right. So the last thing, I think this is the last slide before I get to my demos. We got to talk about this concept of the rise of the citizen developer. And this is a really good thing. Citizen developers are non-programmers taking over some of the development roles without having to learn developer JavaScript and all this other stuff. The reason this is so huge is it's much easier today to use developer tools than it was. A lot more drag and drop, a lot more visual interface without lines and lines of coding. I don't need a college degree in programming to put some of this stuff together. We have some really cool AI assistants, and I'm going to show you an amazing integration between Power Apps and ChatGPT, for example, but there's hundreds of these kind of integrations out there. The biggest issue is this number 3, a huge delay in the back and forth between the developers and the people who are asking for the app, the business customers. I use this example all the time. 2 of my best friends that are actually married to each other, they worked for JCPenney Corporation here in the United States, big clothing store. And their job was to work as buyers using analytics to try to predict what the next hottest trends were in clothing, right? Bell-bottom jeans are coming back, or thin waist or skinny jeans, or whatever, what colors, what sizes. So they would often get requests from the store managers that have to provide inventory ahead of time to make sure their stores are stocked, and they're talking back and forth, and they're running reports, and they're doing all this analytics. And what happened is Sam and Michelle, that's who my friends were, would work with the stores, and the stores would say, I need a report that looks like this and does this. They'd go work on it, they'd come back, and they'd say, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted it differently. I want to look at it by, the type of clothes or the type of style branched out by. And it would just keep going back and forth and back and forth. Do it this way, no, do it this way, how about this, did this work? And you get this crazy back and forth that was taking like 6 months before they could finally all agree on what the report should look like and how it comes out. The problem is 6 months later, you've already missed the whole buying trend and everything else. And Sam and Michelle used to talk about this all the time, that it was just a ridiculous pain because they could not get fast enough through this development process. With citizen developers, I can take 90% of the workload and hand it back to the person who wants this report, wants this analytics to be done, whatever, and say, using drag and drop, you design it. You tell me exactly how you want it. My developers will still come in at the end. They'll do the last 10% of plugging in the data and getting all the kind of fancy stuff done. But 90% of the work can be done by a regular developer who does not have a programming license. I'll show you that today. What this net effect of this thing is now smaller companies can afford to do their own custom development. If I'm a mid-tier company, I don't know if I have enough money to hire a staff of 12 developers to work around the clock. It's just not feasible for me. But if I can use citizen developers and have my citizen developers organize and build the look and the feel and how they want all this stuff to go, and then I only have to hire 1 developer to come in and kind of plug the last parts in, suddenly I can also be doing custom apps and custom programs and custom analytics, the same as the big companies. So I get that competitive edge without driving my costs way high. This is why this is such a hot topic right now. This is why everyone seems to want to talk about it. Everyone wants to get into it. So let's get to the demos and we'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Here are the demos I'm going to show you. I'm going to talk about data connectors. I'm going to talk about Power BI dashboards, extract, transform, and loads, custom reports, AI, kiosks, Power Automate, flattening folders. We're going to show you we're going to show you everything. It's going to be a fun ride, I think. We will probably use the good portion of our time today is just going to be demo. Again, I encourage you, I've got the windows open. If you have any questions, throw them to me in chat or throw them into the questions. I'm here to answer your questions as well as to teach you. And this is your chance to get information back. And even if you just want to say, I have a question, pretty sure I could figure out how to turn your microphones on. You can just ask the question if you don't want to type it in. But I want to make this as interactive as humanly possible. Make sure you get whatever questions answered. All right, so let's dive into that. I'll come back to that, but it's time for a demo. I'm going to start with, actually, let me slide this over. I'll just use this as my agenda. There we go. I'm going to start with Power BI, and I'm going to show you right here is a dashboard that I've created, and we'll talk about how to make it and what's involved. All these topics that I just talked about, all the demos that I have today, they're giving you a taste for the technology. I'm hoping that you will come back for a future webinar where I'll dive deep on each one of these, right? I'm going to spend 10 minutes on Power BI when I could teach a week-long class on Power BI. There's just so much to discuss. So I'm just going to give you a taste of it, but realize one of the things I'm going to talk about, people ask, well, how do you build these beautiful dashboards? Well, there's actually processes and and tips and tricks on how to make these really cool looking kind of dashboards like you see here. I have one in black. I made one in white just to make it look completely different. Looks kind of cool, the shading, etc. This is a very professional looking kind of device. And these are all live, by the way. So if I go back here and I turn on all my accounts, you see the data all gets updated. Every time I click on anything, it adjusts and works. So this is a real live dashboard, but we put this beautiful interface around it. I will have a future technical session that just focuses on doing dashboards, for example. Or I'll have one that deep dives on building Power Apps from scratch, that kind of thing. So today is just to give you an overview of how it all kind of sticks together, and then I hope you come back for the specifics where you'll learn each individual thing. I want to start though by talking about, again, this kind of core platform that Microsoft has, where if you remember all the 5 apps are on the top, and underneath I've got those 3 things, the first one being data connectors. Microsoft has separated from Power Platform the data resources and the tools that use those data resources, and they connect the two through data connectors. The data connectors are found in all of the products, so Power Apps, Power Automate, chatbots, you name it, they all have the same kind of data connectors. And I'm going to show you right here, notice there's a button that says Get Data, and when I click on this, Microsoft puts up some common data sources. We'll talk about these: SQL Server, Power BI data sets, data flows, all this other stuff. But this is a very teeny small fraction of all the potential connectors that are out there. So if I click on the More button here, you're going to see a new window is going to pop up. Make sure it didn't pop up. There it is. Where it's going to show me all of these connectors. And these are outside of Microsoft too. Notice I have Oracle, IBM, DB2, Sybase, Salesforce is in here, Facebook is in here. Pretty much everything you can think of has a connector now that not only attaches to Power BI, but these same connectors work with the rest of the Power Platform. So Microsoft did a really cool job of separating the data connectors from the tools that use it. And those tools are just expecting the data to come through a pipeline through these connectors, and then it's totally up to you to decide which connectors you want to use and which data sources you need on the back end, and merging data sources. I mean, there's just a ton of stuff that you can really get into. But these connectors, all these gazillions and gazillions and gazillions of connectors, will work in all of the Power Platform applications. So that's why I wanted to show you is this is here. In this particular case, I can hook this interface that I have to SQL Server. I can hook it to SharePoint as a data source. I could hook it to NoSQL. I could hook it to Oracle. I can hook it to anything. It really doesn't matter. You can even hook this just out to a web page and pull data off of web pages. And I'm going to give you an example of this a little later when we talk about Power Automate and some of the cool features that you can do. So I'll show you a demo of that. This particular dashboard, as I said, is made up of all these components, and I'll show you how we can do simple drag and drop. These components are all interfaced with each other. So you notice here, I want to look at shoes. Let's say I only want to look at women's shoes. Power BI allows, through this dragging and dropping of these controls, and I'll show you how to do this in a second. When I click on something like I want to filter by women, you'll notice all the graphs just updated, and it's now showing me the data only as it relates to the sales of women's shoes. What if I want women's shoes that were blue? And now it's only filtering women's shoes that were blue. What if I want women's shoes that were blue and they are dress shoes and they come in a 4-inch heel and they are of a certain type, pumps, wedges, slingbacks, certain size, certain width? It doesn't matter. I can build an interface here and I can publish this out to my organization. And now my CEO, my executives, my managers can go up here and they can just keep querying just by clicking the buttons, and they can get the real-time data coming across exactly as they want it to be, and get analysis and get page after page. And again, I can skin the interface on the front to look however I want to. If I want to just see dress shoes, I just click on the word dress, and you'll notice it changes all the information. Maybe I want women's dress shoes. Now I'm going to click on women's. I've already clicked on dress, and now I'm getting it filtered through. So the interface can be customized in any way, shape, or form that you want. I can build a dashboard, and I can publish this out so everyone in my organization can get to it. Well, great, Mike. How does this work? Well, let's hop over here for a sec, and I'm going to show you. Actually, start a new page. Now, I've already connected my data, and I put kind of that back-end plumbing together. Remember what I told you, 90% of the work by your citizen developers is the drag and dropping and kind of setting this stuff up. I still need 10% of my devs to go in, and chances are they're going to be the ones that kind of connect the tables together, make sure the relationships work right. My business users aren't going to understand how to do that. But versus 6 months of working with a dev team of 9 people, now I can just have one dev come in, put that plumbing together, hand it off, and say, you're ready to go. And now my business process people can just start dragging and dropping. So now that this is all connected, this is the 10% that my devs did. Now my business people, Sam and Michelle, they want to see reports on how these different shoes did. In this particular case, they click on a report. So here's a line graph. I'll just pull this out. Notice it's got the familiar handles that you always see inside of Microsoft products. And if you're familiar with pivot charts and pivot tables, it works exactly the same way. It says, what do you want on the X, the Y, the legend, the whatever? And all I have to do is just drag and drop stuff into this particular graphic that I'm laying out here. So I always tell people the first thing you always start with is, what is it you're really wanting to see? In this case, I want to see the money. Show me the money. How much did I sell? So if I go under sales, I'm going to look at the actual price, and I'm just going to drag that in as the value of what it is I'm looking. And you'll notice when I did this, it just gave me one dot. If I hover over that dot, it says 87 million. Now, even though that was lightning fast, it went through over 1 million records, and it quickly sorted them, got it together, and gave me the answer. That's really not telling me anything other than over, in this case, 7-year period of time, I sold 87 million. I want to break these out by stores, for example. So I'm going to go to the stores table, and I'm going to grab the current stores. I'm going to put that in my legend. And so now you'll see Atlanta, Boston, Charlotte, Chicago. I know some of you are not in the US, these are US cities. And so if I hover over each one of these, I can see, okay, New York did 6 million, Miami did 5.1 million, et cetera. Still interesting, but again, just like a pivot table would be in Excel, I now want to see this over a period of time. And so I can go over here, and if I want to, I'm going to go up to my date time table. These are all interlinked together. And I might want to say, for example, what year is this particular thing coming from? And so if I put that in the x-axis, and there you go, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So I'm seeing the data for 1 million sources of data being mapped over the top of this thing. I see a question has come in. We have ASP.NET Web Application SQL Server app on Azure VMs. The customer using this sometimes wants simpler pages for customers to use that gives them a read-only page view of the status of things that they've submitted. Is Power Apps a good fit? Wow. Literally, Jeffrey, you just wrote the definition of what Power Apps is for. That's the whole point. Everything that we're doing here, because it's built in Power Apps, because Power Apps runs on systems, in this case, we're running on the Windows environments, we have Active Directory, et cetera. You can have every page and every interaction of every page tied to the user who's looking at the data. So I could say, for example, Mike O'Neill, you shouldn't be looking at this. You do not have rights to even see this report, versus Mahender or someone else who I give full access and full rights. And when they go there, they can now interface and interact and do whatever they want to. So your point about pages for customers gives them read-only view. You can set it as read-only. You can set it as editable. You can set it by group privilege. So I can say I mark these people as data admins, and I can say all data admins can now interface with this chart, but they can't interface with this one. And so you can set really controlled restrictions on these based on Active Directory, based on rights and regulations inside this. Same thing if you're in an AWS world. This works as well, setting up those principles and policies. And a quick plug, I'm trying not to do too many plugs, but that's what Fuji does. We'll go in and we'll help you, get the rights and privileges, the digital rights for all the different parts and pieces set correctly, so you don't have to worry about accidentally taking payroll information and sharing it with the rest of the company, for example. One more thing I want to show you here. Again, we have so much more to cover, but I can keep dragging more and more of these things out here. I'm going to put a slicer. The slicer, I'm going to go up here, and for example, down in the stores, I mark my stores by region. So I'm going to grab region and throw it over. There's my regions. Anything that I put on this page is instantly working with everything else on this page. So if I say only show me the Northeast region, you'll notice that it filtered out and I'm only seeing the 4 stores in my Northeast region. What about Northwest? What about Southwest? I could just keep clicking. I can hold Control key down and say, show me these 2. So it's totally up to you how you want to build these dashboards and how you want to look and cut and analyze the data, but it all comes through really, really easily, really, really fast. I want to show you one more thing, because if you remember on our slide deck, let me go back to it for a second. Pull this over. You remember this little thing? So we looked at the data connectors. Now we're looking at Power BI. The other thing you're going to see me come back to again and again is this AI builder. And the one that they put in here for Power BI, and it's one of many that's in Power BI, but this blows my mind. Every time I see this thing, this just kills me how cool it is. What they did is they put the hooks to that. I'm going to rearrange my windows here so I can see everything. They put the hooks for that, and so I'm going to go back to this page, and let me get rid of these just so you can see I'm not pre-doing anything. In Power BI, you can double-click anywhere on the page, and it's going to integrate into the AI. Now, I want to make sure you understand, I have done nothing to set this up. There's no special tricks. There's no anything. Microsoft's AI module looks at your data, in the data cube in this particular case. It has read through the data, and using AI, it understands my data, meaning that I can talk to my data in pure English, and it'll give me those results back. So let's say I don't know. Remember, I'm a citizen dev. I don't know how to program. I'm not sure how all these charts, and graphs work. You can just go out here, and you can just start typing whatever you want. So it's saying, for example, here's some things you might want to ask. What are the top style per profit of each shoe? And it just made that up looking at the data and trying to figure stuff out. But I don't have to use their questions. I've already pre-canned some here just so you don't have to see me try to type this. I'm going to say list the current store by their sum of actual price. So notice as I'm typing, and if I spelled correctly, that would help, A-C-T-U-A-L, actual price. So it's just listing the store, and it's putting all the actual prices, the sum of all actual prices, but I may want it for a particular year. So I'm going to say in 2020. And just by typing that sentence, it's now listing all the stores top to bottom. This is Philadelphia. In 2020, they did just under $1 million in sales. New York did 908, and on and on and on. And I had it create that for me just by talking in English. Again, there's no smoke and mirrors going on here. This is exactly how Power BI works. It reads your data, it analyzes it for you, and then you just talk to it, ask it questions. Now, I have to use the terms that it understands, right? So I couldn't say, if I just put stores, it's not going to know what stores is because my database defines it with the name current stores. Now, for a future session, because I don't have time today to go into it, you can actually train it to use your own words. So I could say, hey, if you see the word stores, what I'm really referring to is the current store or retail store or whatever terms you use, you can tie it back in, teach Power BI to use your vernacular, and then anybody and everyone just starts asking any questions. And to show you, I pre-canned some of these again, so you don't have to watch me type. I'm just going to copy and paste. So let me go here, let me go here. I'll just paste in a new one, list the top 20 sales reps by the sum of actual price in 2019, only on sales that occurred on a weekend, and sort them by region. That is a monstrously complex query, but I just asked it and boom, there it came out and there is my data. And anytime I have this, if I want to, I can now go up here and I can pin this, turn this into a standard visual. Meaning, this is great, this is what my execs want. I just click this button and boom, it's now a real chart on a real report that I can put into a real dashboard without me having to do anything. And now I'm ready to do the next one. I just double click and boom, I've got my Q&A. I'll do one more just again to show you how easy. This time I'm gonna do a little differently. I'm gonna list which color family, list the color family by the greatest average actual price in December. So it's not December for a particular year, it's every December for all 7 years of my sales. Look at the average actual price, and there you go. Believe it or not, green shoes are the most profitable shoe. I have no idea why, followed by orange, yellow, blue, multi, black, etc. So it's looking at the shoes, it's taking the average actual price, it's only looking in the month of December and telling me which color is the most profitable. Originally, I was going to actually show you how you would build this. I guess I could do it in 2 seconds, but you really have to know what you're doing. I would have to grab a matrix. I'm going to pull the matrix up here. I know I want it by colors, so I got to jump up into the deals here and grab colors, and I want the color family. So I'm going to put that in the rows. In the column section or value section, I want the money amount. So I'll go down here to sales and actual price. And the whole point I'm showing you is there's a lot of steps I've got to do. Once I got the actual price, because I want the average instead of the sum, I got to turn it to average. Then I care about which month it is. So I'm going to go back up here, find the month name and drag it down into the columns. Now I've got the data. I can go to December. Here's December, and I can look, and I want to sort by December. Sort by December. I don't have, I got the filter on instead of the sort. See if I can do it this way. Group, okay. Anyway, if I look, green is going to be at $111 is the average price, and if I hover over this, it should be $112.09. So a little rounding of the deals. But you can see that was 20 steps to build this. This was just type the sentence in, and boom, I've got the data in the visual. So just a phenomenal example, and only one of a lot of examples of how Microsoft's integrated that AI. Double check there's no other questions. Looks like we're good on that. So I'm just going to keep on cranking. So that's just a teeny glimpse at Power BI. But again, remember, I'm crunching 1 million points of data from, I don't even know how many tables. I've got probably 7 different tables here. And it's sorting and it's filtering and it's doing all this thing instantaneously and giving me a live demo. So if I want to see only Amelia King, I click on her name, and it'll filter and pull all the data and only show me what relates to Amelia. And then when I go back, boom, it comes back. So very, very cool, very, very powerful, very amazing ability and tools. And that's Power BI with my data connectors that I was talking about. Let's move on because we have so much more. So we have an extract, transform, and load, ETL. Functionality, and what this means is the data that you're looking at is being stored in a data cube. This is an interim space where Microsoft holds data locally to give me this really fast feed. What does that mean? That means, let's say I want to go to my SQL server, my Oracle server. I have a corporate database, it's got 1 terabyte or 2 of data, and I need access to that data. Rather than try to grab the entire database over, when I create my data using the data connectors, I can limit the amount of data I need. I only need to see our US stores. I don't need to see Europe and Asia and everywhere else. So when I filter that query, I say only give me the US stores between this date and this date, and that data comes over as a local data cube. Once I have a local data cube, I now can go transform that data. And I'm just going to show you one really cool thing. Again, I hope you'll come back for future technical sessions where we'll really get into this. But here's my data cube, and it's showing me connecting into these cubes. What is amazing about Power BI, because I have my own copy of the data. So in other words, I hit the Oracle database, I grab the US retail sales for the period of time I was looking at, and that data has come back to me in my own data cube. I can now mess with this data all I want to without affecting anyone else who's working on that Oracle data. For example, I don't want to call this brands. I want to call this manufacturer's name or something like that. So I'll go to rename and I'll call it the manufacturer. I just spell. That's not how you spell it, but that's okay. I'm going to hit enter. I just changed the fundamental structure of my database table. Now, if I was still working on Oracle and it was a live connection, anyone that was doing data would now be screwed up because there's no longer a brand column. It's now called manufacturer. And I can keep changing and adding and editing and moving things around. And I don't want the manufacturer there. I want to move it up front. And this is a text, and I'd rather have this be a number or a choice. I can spend all the time that I want to fix this thing up how I want it to be without affecting my main data source. The last thing I want to show you about this, because I think this is one of the most advanced, coolest features, and a lot of people don't realize this, is as I did this, you'll notice these applied steps. This is like your macro recorder in Excel, okay? So every change I make, I'll do one more. Instead of width, I'm just doing simple ones because I don't want to make it too complex, but I'll make the shoe width, right? Just to make it more clarified in case anyone's got a question. And again, learn to type, Mike, shoe width. There we go. I named it shoe width. And now you'll see it says rename column 1. This macro recorder is actually storing all the steps for Power BI and the data connectors. And what that allows me to do is to transform my data tables to exactly what I need them to be. And check this out. If I go under the advanced editor, and again, I have another technical session, I'll go deep into this. What Microsoft is doing is it's writing all the code for all of the extract, transform, and load to save it for whatever it is I want to change this to. Why is that important? Now, first off, this is called M code. It's a language that supports data creation, ETL, all that good stuff. I can literally save this data. I could copy it. I'm going to run Notepad here, for example, just to show you. And that opened the wrong screen. Let me pull it over. There we go. And I'm just going to paste this bad boy in. I just saved the code. It's just text code. And if you're familiar with VBA and other languages, it's pretty simple. You can just look at this, you know exactly what it's doing. It's reordering, it's renaming, it's sliding this stuff around. This is great. I'm going to kill this in my query. I'm literally going to blow this away. There we go. And when I do this, you can see it's going to mess up everything. I got error messages and everything else under the sun. But because I saved this, imagine once I get this table done, it took me a week to get it exactly as I want it to. I save it now in Notepad, or I send it an email to myself, or I do whatever, just save the text file. The next month comes around, the new data comes in for the next month, and in the olden days, what you used to have to do is go rebuild the query again. I'd have to spend another week putting all that stuff together. This time, when the new data comes in, all I got to do is go right back to the query editor. So I'm right back into the same spot that I'm in. I'm going to go into that advanced editor, and I'm just going to paste the code right back in the way it was from last month's deal. And the second I say done, boom, it all comes right back. And now it's got the new data applied to it. This is a lifesaver. I used to, when I worked at Microsoft, I was an analyst for Microsoft for multiple years, and I'd spend 2 weeks formatting my data, 2 weeks building the report, and as soon as I delivered it, all the data would change for the next month, and I have to start back over. This tool allows you to set it up one time, save it in text format, and then when the next month comes, the next one, just paste it in, fire it off, and boom, your data is right back up where it wants to. So that's the real value of ETL. I can build custom reports. I showed you the AI stuff. It's absolutely amazing. Let's take this to the next degree. And again, I'm looking, make sure there are no other questions that we have. If you have any, or you want me to stop and go deeper on something, please let me know. Let's keep on rolling. So I've got the, let me do this real fast. Okay. Sorry, trying to get my windows here straight. Not used to this GoToWebinar, so it's kind of weird. There we go. One last second. Got it. Okay. So that's put there. So let's go into Power Apps now and show you some demos of Power Apps. So I'm going to close that down. Don't need that anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and close these down since I don't need them anymore. Not now. And not that. This will free up a little memory for me. So in Power Apps, let's show you the same low-code, no-code thing. So here is my environment. Whoops, put this over on this screen and maximize. There we go. So now I've got my browser open. You'll notice I'm using Google Chrome. You can use Edge or Safari or anything else you don't or that you want. It's a browser agnostic. It doesn't care. And so when I have this open, if I go log into my portal.office.com, I'm logging into my Office 365 subscription, and I click on the little hamburger, that's what they call this thing, you'll see I have Power Apps, I have Power Automate, I have all the different programs and stuff. And if I go into any one of these like Power Apps, I can look at different applications that I have created. So I can learn, chatbots we'll get into, AI models, all this. I look at the apps, you can see we're building tons of apps here at Fuji, and I can pull one that I'm interested in. I have one open, it's called Shoe Store Inventory, this is it. So this is the Shoe Store Inventory. The data that you just saw in Power BI was a fictional shoe store. It just allows people to understand, you know, we all understand shoes have different styles and sizes and stuff. So I decided to take that metaphor and extend it out. And I wanted a kiosk that a customer could come to that would show what shoes are available. So I decided to build this with Power Apps. Let me show you how this works real quick. Excuse me, wow, a little bit of a sneeze. So I load this up and I've already got a problem. You probably noticed that in this resolution, the inventory system is not quite lining up correctly. The button is though. I'm going to enter this. It's going to ask me which of the prototypes do I want. I'll have 5 or 6, but right now I built this boot finder. So when you want the perfect boot, this is where you go. And it looks very similar to a Power BI tool in that I can go up here and say, I want to look at women's boots and I want them to be ankle boots. And when I do this, it has gone out, it's hit a very, very large database. We'll talk about size of database here in a second. And it came back with all the possible boots. And it's even pulling in the color, the shape, the photograph of the boots. I've got the information on the boots. I know how many of them are in inventory. I can add them to my cart. If I've logged in as a manager, which I've done here, I can click the restock button, and I'll show you in a minute. This will send off a billing shipping deal to my inventory group to make sure they order more of these boots so I can get more in stock, etc. But very, very simple interface. And I could say, change these to knee high, change these to mid calf, and you can see how fast that's pulling back. In this case, there's 2,633 different types of boots that meet this particular requirement, different sizes, different shapes, etc. I haven't put it in, but I can even go into what is the material made of, what is the closure, what is it, a round toe, or you know, how high the heel. All of those can be just like the filters that you saw in Power BI, but now I can create an interface where a customer could buy or do stuff, interact and find the perfect boot. How hard was this to build? Well, because it's low code, no code, it's actually incredibly easy. And I'm going to show you some of this. So here's my screen. Just took a snapshot of some shoes and put our logo, Soul Shoes, in here. Now notice that this inventory system should be aligned right about here. And I want the enter button to be aligned right here. There's one thing that Microsoft does that's really, really cool, but it's important when we talk about different features and functions. We need to create an adaptive, responsive solution, okay? And this was really hard to do. In SharePoint, Microsoft took a long time before they came out with what they call the modern interface, which allows it to adjust to any screen size or any shape or anything. Back when this was all SharePoint, it was pretty easy. It was a desktop computer, right? But now we want to pull that same information on our iPhones, or we want to pull it up on our Android tablets or whatever. The device could be completely different. The size ratio and all the resolution can change radically depending on the device. So I need this thing to adapt to various controls. By default, Microsoft will go in here, and under display, you can see I can set the orientation, and I can lock that orientation if I want to. So if I know it's going to be, for example, on a desktop or an iPad, I want it to lock to landscape. I can lock it to portrait. I could tell it not to lock it. I also have this scale to fit, and watch what happens if I turn this on. What it's going to do is it's going to scale everything no matter what the size of the resolution is. Here's that lock aspect ratio, lock the orientation. You have all these controls, but for this solution, and only for this solution, I'm going to turn this scale to fit on. And so if I run this now, same everything, I haven't changed anything, but if I go ahead and hit play, you'll notice that the inventory lines up correctly. And if I change the size of the screen, bear with me, let me get this into a size that we can see. There we go. So it doesn't matter what I change the size of the screen. I was obviously using a huge monitor before I did this. There we go. Now we can see it. It's still lining up perfectly. So as I adjust, it is creating a system that will shrink things down and always keep things aligned for you. So it's like a modern interface in SharePoint. So people will ask me, well, why wouldn't I do that all the time? That makes it 10 times easier. I don't have to program things. I don't have to try to figure out where stuff should be, etc. For 90% of the time, this works beautifully. But there are cases where you need to take more control over the aspect ratio. And I'm going to show you one of those right now. If I go ahead and enter this product, let me go back into this screen, you'll notice that I'm using something called a header. A header has the button to get me back to the home screen. It's got our logo. I've got the text. This is the boot search part of it. And it knows who I am. It looked up my account. It looked up my ID and shows me that I have representation here. Now, what happens if I start changing the size of this screen? You will see it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It is supposed to adjust and make it smaller, 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 but keep things in the exact same ratio that it had before. This is great in some instances, but I want to show you where it's not so great. You'll notice the text is getting so small that you can't even read it anymore, right? And so imagine if this big widescreen app was running on an iPhone, I literally couldn't even interface with it because I couldn't see. The buttons down here would be so small, I couldn't even press them with my finger because the target is infinitesimally small. It just won't work. So yes, Microsoft provides this kind of adaptive deal where it'll resize as necessary, but there are times where we want more control. Let me show you how we do that control. I'm going to go back to the same settings icon down here. I'm going to go into the display. This time, I'm going to turn off scale to fit. And the reason that the button worked, but the text didn't on that opening screen, let's go back here. This button will work. It'll stay exactly where it is. This button won't work. Let me show you why. If I click go, I'm now looking at it in preview. Now I'm going to start jacking with the size. And again, things are going to change and modify. Notice the inventory system is no longer being aligned the way it's supposed to, but the button is. The reason why is I went into the program, and again, doesn't take a programming degree on this, but if I go in and I click on the button and I pull down its properties, you notice I have an on select telling it where to go, but here my X position and my Y position, I can hard code these. I can say take the app width, how wide the app will be when it's running, and I always want this button to be right on the halfway mark because that's what lines up with my soul shield, okay? If I click on the system deal and I do the same thing, I put the X value, it should actually be 0.067. So I think I messed up my code when I was doing a previous demo. But I can adjust it and tell it specifically, I always want you to use 50% of the screen or 47.9% or whatever. And that makes sure that it adjusts and gets to the right point no matter what that resolution is. Now you're probably saying, that's not a big reason not to turn that auto scaling on. That saves me so much time and money. Let me show you one last one, which is when I go into the lookup screen, you remember that I had this header. And headers are awesome because I build a header and then I can just drop that header on every page and it gets branded with the same look, the same feel, etc. I have turned off the auto sizing, and I want to go ahead and run this now for you. You've seen this app, right? So we just had the boots and we did all this stuff. But watch what happens now when I auto size this screen, okay? So right now, you'll notice I've got the home screen, the logo, the boot search, my name, and my picture. As I start to pull this in, there's a feature that's watching the size of this. And I've written code that says when you get so small, like you're down to a tablet or a phone, take away the less important stuff. I don't need the logo anymore. I do need to jump back to the home screen. I do want to know what screen I'm on, and I want my picture, but I don't need my text anymore. So you'll notice as I move back, as I make it bigger, it says, okay, now I've got enough room to display these. As I make it smaller, it's adapting and showing less and less, conserving the space on the screen so that it'll work on an iPhone or a tablet or whatever. To get this level of control, I have to take off that auto sizing, auto adjusting, okay? But if you're doing this professionally, if you really want this to work in an enterprise, and I want to be able to tell the customer, and by the way, we do this, Fuji does this for our customers, right? What devices are you going to use? And if the answer is we want everyone to be able to use whatever device they're most comfortable with, then we need to program it so that it'll adapt to any device in any resolution and in any aspect ratio by doing what I just showed you here. So templates and these headers and stuff, they're all just one example, but you can see how I can get full custom control over all the resolution, size, space, etc. It is 11:30. I'm getting a little behind. I'm talking a little too much, but that's the responsiveness of Power Apps. Now we're going to come back to Power Apps in a second, kind of building a story. But the question is, if I go down here and I say, for example, I want to restock this boot, and I punch this button, you can see these dots appear. What I just did is I just kicked off a Power Automate script in the background, and I'm going to show you that next. What this Power Automate script will do, I'm looking all over my menus because I think it's going to, I think I set this one up to send me an email. So we'll look at my email here in a second. But for right now, let me just jump over to Power Automate. So here is Power Automate. And you can build Power Automates to do whatever you want. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to look at my flows. These are the different scripts. You'll notice I got tons of these. One of these is relating to the, here's the restock. So let's go edit the restock. Let's just look at what it's doing. So I built a Power Automate script, again, low code, no code, just drag and drop in the features that you want. There's tons of templates. There's tons of information to teach you how to do this. But what I did is I said, look, when Power Apps gets triggered for this flow, what do you want to do? I want to send an email. And it has, through the ability of dragging and dropping, I could say send an email to a particular person, and I will go in, show you, I've got some programming in here or some simple, it's not even program, it's just fill in the blank. Who do you want to send it to? I want to send it from Mike O'Neill. What's the subject? Stock reorder of this shoe with the brand name of the shoe. What should be in the body? Please reorder this product, blah, 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 blah. So I've just real simply by dragging and dropping, I set this stuff up. And let's see which way this loads. Let me go back here. We should have got an email. Pop this over real fast so my whole email is not out in front of the world. Should have thought of this ahead of time. Oh, actually, I can't see it with all these other screens open. Let me try it real fast and just see if it popped in. It's interesting, it did not. It should have. Oh, there it is, stock reorder request. So I'll open this up and slide it over. So I sent it to my home email. Where'd it go? Sorry, let's go back. There it is, stock reorder request. It tried to resize on me. Grab it, drag it. There we go. And you see it was sent to Mike O'Neill or michael.o@fuji.com. Message was low importance, please reorder, and it gave me the part number. So it's a simple script. It's nothing fancy, but it doesn't have to be. I'm just trying to show you that it's super easy. I can do this without a degree. Well, how do you do this? Let me jump back to an easier to understand flow. I've got one here. Give me today's weather forecast for my current location. Okay, and I'm going to go edit this to show you how this thing works. So when we build a flow, it's going to start asking, well, what do you want to connect to? What sources do you want? And there's thousands of sources out there. So I'm going to say, I'm going to trigger this flow. When I trigger this flow, I want to go look at an existing condition. And if I expand the condition is I want to look at the user and say, are they in the United States? If the answer is yes, I want to give them their answer in imperial numbers. If they're not in the United States, because the whole rest of the world is a lot smarter, they went to the metric system, I want to answer in metric terms. So that's all this is doing, is looking up the user, what's their country of origin? Okay, it's the United States, then I'm going to give it to them in Fahrenheit, and over here, I'm going to give it to them in metric. And then what do you want to do? And I simply go use some of the services built into Power Apps. Now, again, no coding in here. It's just drag and drop. And I click on here, get the forecast for today. I pass it my longitude and latitude. I don't know what that is, but Windows knows what that is. So it's just going to grab my current location, and then it's going to post up a team chat for me and say, hi, the current weather conditions for your location are blah, 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 with blah, 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 blah. And then I said, go ahead and shoot me an email, and it's going to pass me an email with similar types, different but similar. And then the last thing it's going to do is I want to record all this in a table so that when this runs every day, I can just keep a history of what my local weather is like. All of this done with just simple drag and drop. Well, how does that work? I just click on add an action. And when I add an action, it comes up here and it shows me all of the different things I can do. You want to do something in Teams? You want to go look at your email? You want to do some weather? That's what I did here. I said, let's go get some weather stuff. Here's current weather, forecast for tomorrow. And there's a whole lot more. These are just MSN weathers, but there's a lot of other weather tools out here I can use. Do you want to do control? Do you want to do Excel? And each one of these, you can just type what it is you're trying to do. It'll come up with a solution. So let me go back to weather. I want to get the current weather. It says, okay, great. What location do you want? I can hard code this to say Little Elm, Texas, because that's where I live. I could put in my zip code, or we can add in what's called dynamic content, which means I want you to go look up where I am. I want you to pull up my longitude or my latitude or what zip code my browser is currently operating in, and take that data and then pass it on. So again, just drag and drop and put these things in can build out these really cool tools. Let's go ahead and run this just to show you. I'm going to run a test on this just so you can see what it is. I'll manually trigger this just because I'm testing it. So it's going to go through and double check this thing. And now it says, okay, loading. It's going to ask me if I want to run. So I'll run. It says, hey, Power Automate, this is Microsoft Teams. Hi, here's your current weather conditions. Let me slide this over. Here's your current weather conditions for 301 Turnstone Drive, Little Elm, Texas 75. What's interesting is this is not my address. This is where the router for my internet connection is. It's a couple houses down from where I live. Weather is sunny. Today's forecast, expect sunny skies. The high is 80 degrees. Tonight, the moon phase will be a waxing gibbous moon. That's real data for my real location. It also just sent me an email and says, hey, today's weather just came in for the same address. It's sunny, expect skies with a high will be 80 degrees, partly cloudy, okay? Notice this text is different than the one that came in here because I programmed it to be that way. So simple drag and drop allows me now to make very sophisticated functions that not only can do things like check the weather, they could check my inventory. They could check the accounting department. They could check HR. Do I have enough credits or sick days or vacation days to take that vacation? So you can build these interactive systems by plugging into back-end controls. And you're probably saying, well, how do I do that? Well, that's what Microsoft has done, is built those plugins for those back-end controls where I just drag and drop it in and it asks me, okay, what do you want? I want to hook to my inventory system. Show me where your inventory system is. Here it is. What do you want from the inventory system? I want my boots for females with a 4-inch heel made of leather. Boom, there's your answer. So without me doing any real programming, that's the no code part, I can get 90% of the way there on building these amazing, amazing systems. Let's see what it all looks like when you wrap it up. So that's Power Automate. Again, we'll come back to that in just a second. But we can go in under Power Automate and under Power Apps. We go to Power Apps for a second and stop this. I want you to see, go back here, just go up to the Power Apps program, that I have chatbots built into this. Now, we use the term chatbots. Everyone calls them chatbots, but they're officially Microsoft virtual agents. And so if I click on chatbots, it's going to come up. I've been doing a lot of chatbot stuff. They're really cool. You can have them interface with different stuff. But here's a weather bot that I built. The exact same thing. I think I have it open over here. Yep, weather bot. And let me show you how this works. It's pretty cool. You just have to define topics for it to use. So I went out there and I made a weather topic. And if I click on this, I made it pretty simple. It says, what would the customer be asking when you want me to trigger this routine in the chatbot? So I just put, what's the weather? How's the weather? What's the current temp? Is it raining? What are the weather conditions? And notice I just used abbreviated forms. I don't have to write it out specifically because Microsoft's natural language engine AI module understands conceptually and can map back. So instead of saying, how's the weather? I will ask, what is the current weather, right? And that's not listed anywhere in these trigger phrases. When I do, it's going to come back and say, let me check. And then I'm going to call one of the Power Virtual Agents, one of the ones I built for weather, the one you just saw. And I'm going to go grab the latest weather report, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to use these variables and say, here are the current conditions, here's the temp, here's the humidity, et cetera, et cetera. So the same kind of thing, drag and drop, but I can put all this together. Let's go ahead and run this, show you how it is. I'm going to test the bot. Remember, I don't have to use the exact phrase, what is the current weather conditions, question mark, and it's smart enough to dissect that, realize what I'm asking, and then you're going to see it trigger this off. And it says, oh, let me check. Here are the current conditions: sunny, temperature 72 degrees, humidity of 35, pressure is 30, wind is 6 miles out of 110 degrees with gust up to 9. So how cool is that? I just used a chatbot to interface my Power Flow, my Power Apps, to go out to a service that's out there for free to pull all the weather and come back and give me weather literally for my house, my zip code, my area. And I did it all without writing a single line of code, just drag and drop, drag and drop, drag and drop, okay? That should be impressive. I've got a bunch of other cool ones that I put together, that I built. I have also in this same thing, you notice that I have these other topics. Here's one called Magic 8 Ball. I just did this for fun. I had one for lottery numbers. But notice that they can be part of the same chatbot. So while I'm talking about weather, I can also run a query for the Magic 8 Ball. Tell me my future, or Magic 8 Ball. So if I go back here, I can be up at the top level. I'm still running my chat session, so I can say Magic 8 Ball. I hit enter. Oops, notice I did a typo there, but it said, hey, what would you like to know? Should I buy Microsoft stock? If I hit enter and Magic 8 Ball comes back and says, my answer is, it is certain. And then it goes into, I'm a virtual agent, blah, 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 because I told it to do that. Now, I didn't really program that to say, yes, I should buy Microsoft stock, and don't take that as a stock hint. Let's just use it as an example. The truth of the matter is Magic 8 Ball doesn't even care what you ask. It doesn't even take that into consideration. It just runs through a random number generator that comes back with a typical Magic 8 Ball response. But the idea here is you can see how I could interface all kinds of things. I can do tests. I can say, has your product shipped? What is the tax amount on this? What invoice should I look up for you? Whatever, the chatbot will do that for you. We're going to take this even further with my last 10 minutes. Again, I'm looking, I don't see any questions, so let me know if there's some questions that you would like answered. We'll have a little time at the end. But I'm gonna kind of wrap all this together with a couple more things. So that's virtual agents, whatnot. Power Automate has another thing, and I'm gonna have to go through this super quick, but they have a desktop version of Power Automate. Now understand that Power Automate is designed to be out on the server running in the cloud doing all of its crazy cool stuff. But Microsoft also made a personal productivity version that's called Power Automate Desktop. The design of this is it's there to automate your day-to-day processes, make you more productive. So I wanted to use an example, and I hope my father-in-law isn't gonna get mad at me, but I thought this would be kind of cool. We needed to collaborate a bunch of pictures for a memorial service, actually. And I went to grab my pictures for my father-in-law, and I opened it up, and he's got a ton of pictures. These are the actual folders from these pictures. Here's the funny part about this, is if you open up any of these folders, he has, in most cases, just one picture inside of it, which is ridiculous. You know, you would think you'd put all, but it's just, he's not used to it. And he's got just a few pictures here and a few. If I was trying to collaborate this or look through these pictures, it would take me forever because I'd have to go into folders and subfolders and subfolders and on and on and on. And I literally have done this before, and it's literally a full day's worth of work to do this. I don't want to do that. I want to automate this process. So I went up to Power Automate, and I went to My Flows. Remember, this is my personal desktop. It's not going out to the cloud. This is just running on my machine. And I created one called, I think it's called Flatten a Folder. I made two versions of this. Let's edit it and make sure this is the right one. So this will take a second to load. So it is loading up my local version of this. Now I'm going to run this, so I want to point out a few things here real quick. Let me shut this down. So there's the folder, all the subfolders, etc. It will be a nightmare. There's nothing else on my desktop. I have the recycle bin and I have the pictures, and that's it. What this is going to do is it's going to, again, without any coding, I want it to display a dialog box. I want it to get all the files and files in the subfolders, because that's what it says with subfolders. Grab them, create a new folder called consolidated, move all those files into the consolidated folder, and then delete or empty the old folder. Okay? It doesn't delete it, just empties it. So watch what happens when I run this. Remember, this would literally take a full day worth of work to do. If I click on pictures again, you'll see all the folders and subfolders and everything else. I'm going to go ahead and run this now. Click run. It's going to start ticking through. You'll actually see it. It says, okay, which one do you want me to use? Because I've told it, ask me which folder. I've got this one on the desktop, and it is called pictures. There it is. And so I'm just going to pick the high level of pictures. I say, okay, and it goes ding, ding, ding. It's grabbed them all. It's moved them. It's emptying them. And it came back in under, what, 5 seconds or something. And if I go look at pictures, it's empty. Well, where did they all go? Remember, I told it, make a new folder on my desktop called Consolidated. And it might have put it on the other monitor. Let's see. And it did. So let me go over here. Oh, this is a nightmare because I have so many pictures open. Give me 1 second to look for Consolidated. Where is my Consolidated folder? It's hiding behind one of these screens, and I don't want to shut all these screens down. Let me do it. I can sort by name. There we go. Okay, Consolidated, where are you? Consolidated. Well, I don't see it, but it did work. I'm worried I'm going to shut off the whole presentation. But now I have one folder, and all the pictures are in the root folder of the Consolidated deal. I ran this last night. It worked beautifully, so I know it's there. I just can't see it because it's being hidden. I'm going to give one more attempt to see if I can find the folder. It's on my desktop, but it's just hiding behind all the screens. And I don't see it. So, okay. We'll come back to that at the end. We're almost out of time though, and I don't want to waste time digging for it. But I promise you that worked. It works beautiful. I use it all the time. Very, very cool. Okay, last thing I want to show you, I've only got a few minutes to show you, is now let's pull all this together. We're really talking low code, no code. I've done all this first stuff. I'm now going to talk about Power Apps with ChatGPT. It's a very quick demo. I built this entire solution in a very, very short amount of time. Do I have this open already? Let's double check, double check, double check. I do not, so I'll go ahead and open it now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my apps in Power Apps. I have one help desk with ChatGPT, and I'll run this in a second. I want you to see it first. So what I did, a customer was interested, it was a bank actually, and they wanted a help desk, but they didn't want to have to, like I showed you with the chat bot, write out all the topics. Because if you're an IT group, I want to know, how do I set up my Canon printer? How do I set my IP address? How do I share my files? How do I put my Windows desktop background? That would be a ton of programming if I had to program all that stuff out. And I don't want to do that. I'm lazy, and it's not lazy, I want to be efficient about this. And I want my developers' time being spent on smart things. So what I did is I built a Fuji help desk app, and inside this I put a box, and inside the box I have created a ability to just run and pass the information to ChatGPT, the same service that everyone else uses out there. It's for free. This box will take whatever question I have, it's going to pass it, and it's using this thing that's out there. It's by an independent publisher, so some partner of Microsoft gave this away for free. It's a connector to ChatGPT, and basically what it says is, here, I'm going to hand you this question, and you're going to give me back an answer, and I can redirect that answer back in my Power Apps. So that's all it's doing. It's saying, take the text that I have in this text description box, that's what this is called, pass it in. I can set the number of tokens. We won't talk about tokens now, but I just posted a blog article actually on LinkedIn if you want to read about tokens. Use the model DaVinci 003 and then come back and give me the answer, and I'm just going to display the answer in this AI answer. Watch how this works. And I've done this a couple of ways. It's actually kind of cool. So let me collapse this so you can see. I'm going to run this app. So I'm back here, and it says, this is about finding a tech mentor. That's part of the deal. So how would I find out about Power BI, for example? So I have a question, and I can put it in, and all it's doing is copying it in. So I need a mentor for Power Automate. Now I put two buttons. The first button is just going to ask ChatGPT, and you'll see the dots are trailing. It's going out to the ChatGPT server, and it comes back with the answer, and it gives me step-by-step instructions if I'm asking, for example, about my background or anything else. Oh, that works beautifully. Did this resolve your problem? No, it did not. Let's go back through this one more time. Let me say, how do I set my background in Windows 10? Just a random question that someone might ask. Let's ask it a question. It's going to come back with the answer, and it should have step-by-step answers. Oh, I can't believe it didn't work. Okay, I've got something messed up. I apologize. I was playing with this last night. I think that's the issue. It will come back with step-by-step answers. The other cool part, let's try this one more time. I'm going to use a different thing just to see if this works. It looks like my connector is not connecting, but we'll try this one more time. Let me explain. I have two buttons here. The first button just asks ChatGPT this generic question. Is my answer there and I can't see it? No, it's just not coming back. Okay, my apologies. Every now and then stuff like this happens, but what it does is it comes back with the answer, and it's a generic answer. You should find a mentor. You should look at a user group. You should do this. In the second iteration, when I look at Tech Mentor, in this button, I actually, in the question, I pass it some of my own data. So Mike O'Neill knows about Power BI, building dashboards, DAX programming. He can be contacted at. Rajesh knows about this. Monica knows this. Manohar knows this. So I can pass data into ChatGPT, have it read it, and then pass my question and have it come back. And now this becomes a very specific answer for my organization. The cool thing is by doing it this way, ChatGPT does not absorb the data for future ChatGPT things. So I'm not actually giving away any company secrets by doing this. We here at Fuji are working on, I'm working on a database right now where it's entirely internal and none of your corporate data ever gets out to ChatGPT, but we can still use the ChatGPT engine to process it, analyze it, and bring it back. And in one quick example, just to tell you, I watched a great Microsoft demo the other day. They can use AI, they can point ChatGPT to your website, and it'll read all of the pages and all of the information in your website, and it'll just come back and answer questions about your organization. What is it you do? What are your services? How much does it cost? What's the training like, etc. And to show you, I took this to an extreme just because I wanted to see if I pushed it. Here is the training version of this. So I have a screen for training, and I can say, what's the agenda for Power BI or whatever. When I pass this one in, I just want you to see this. I'm passing in 27 pages of data about the training I offer here at Fuji. So this is all about Power Apps, Power Flow, Automate, etc. And I pass this whole thing in during the question, and then any question you ask, when is a lunch break during Power BI training, it'll read it, come back and give me the answer. So it's very, very cool. The important point is option one, me go write all that, every possible response, every possible answer, every question, blah, 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 take a month to do. Option two is build this, and I apologize, I wish it was working. It was working before I started today's session. But option two, this took me literally less than 45 minutes top to bottom to do all of this. That's low code, no code. That's the real power of everything that we're talking about. Let your non-programmers build the interface and put the graphics and make it look right. Make sure all the boxes are in the right field. Put some of the conditions without writing a single lick of code. And at the very end, have your last, excuse me, wow, it's twice now. Have your developers step in at the last minute and write that last, 10%, or maybe they do it at the front in the data connections, whatever. But it cuts their workload down by 90%. They only have to do about 10%. Now they can do a ton more. Small organizations can now build out these amazing solutions, custom solutions. Fuji will help you do that. I'm going to wrap it all up. We're at the very end, and I'll take any last questions that you have. But I wanted to point out, like I said, we have all these services. We have 600 people globally, worldwide. We have an entire app development team, and I know because I've been teaching them, and their skills are now going beyond my skills, and it's really kind of hacking me off. So I got to get back out there and get knowledgeable. And I build these things on a regular basis. But we have teams that can help you get started. We can advise you. We consult you. We can go build it for you. I don't want this to be a commercial, but I want you to understand that that's one of those services that we do. I want to thank you for participating today. I know we kind of rushed at the end. Customers always are like 90 minutes. I can't afford 90 minutes to watch this. And then when we do this, they tell us, wish we had more time because there's a whole lot of good information.